everybody, welcome back to my channel and to a special birthday Q&A because it is my birthday, not today. Tomorrow, the day after this video is getting posted, the 19th of February, great day for a birthday, would always fall in the February half term, so I never went to school on my birthday. Excellent. And if you've watched my videos for a while now, you'll know that I don't normally wear makeup in videos anymore, but I was feeling fancy today. I wanted to get dressed up for my birthday. I used to be a daily makeup wearer, and then during the lockdowns, I became only if I was going to be on camera makeup wearer. And then after I became a mum, I just was like only for weddings and award ceremonies makeup wearer. And apparently just felt like it today as well. I am going to be 34. Does that count as mid-30s yet? Or is that like 35? But I kind of feel like I'm out of my early 30s now. Kind of? I don't know. I don't know what the rules are. So I wanted to do a little casual, although this isn't exactly casual for me, birthday Q&A. So get comfy, get your beverage of choice, settle in. I did something a bit different this time. Normally when I do a Q&A, I ask for questions on my Instagram stories, and there's always so many responses, which is both a blessing and a curse, but obviously there's a character limit as well. So instead, what I did this time is I posted on YouTube. I did a text post on YouTube asking for questions. So the questions coming in was a much more manageable amount, but also more character space. So we've got some longer questions. But before we dive in, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Squarespace. So whether you are just starting out in the freelance world or you're a small business owner, Squarespace makes it super easy to create your own beautiful website, engage your audience, and sell anything from physical and digital products to courses and even your time, all in one place and all on your terms. I have been using Squarespace as a paying customer for years and years and years now with my main website and also just various other websites that I have created over the years. If I have an idea for something and I have a name for it, I'm like, let's get the domain, thank you very much. And then do I ever do anything with them? Sometimes, but not always. But it's still fun. So Squarespace have loads of different beautiful and flexible and professional website templates, and you just pick the one that suits what you need best, your brand, your vibes, your business, and then you can customize it however you like with all of your own branding and assets, your colors, your fonts, your images, your copy. You can add all sorts of different features to meet your specific needs, and all of the templates work seamlessly across different devices. And Squarespace's Fluid Engine website design system makes things so intuitive and easy, even if you have no website design experience. You can drag and drop things, and it just allows anyone to get really creative making their website. If you have an online store, then Squarespace Payments is the easiest way to manage your payments. Onboarding is really fast and simple, and there are loads of different options for how your customers can pay. If you have more of a service-based business, then there's also Squarespace Invoicing. You can manage your clients and keep track of invoices all in one place, really helping to simplify and manage that workflow. So if you are in need of a website, then you can head to squarespace.com to start your free trial. And then when you are ready to launch it into the world, you can go to squarespace.com/morehannah to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Okay, birthday Q&A time. Need to hydrate. Hopefully the lipstick is gonna stay on. I really went bold. All or nothing with makeup for me, apparently. Let's go. How are you? How's the start of 2026 been for you? I feel like this is an important question to start off with, just to contextualize everything. I'm generally good. The start of 2026 for me has been slow. It has been consumed by IVF, which I have been documenting in kind of like short, bite-sized, written diary-esque blog form things over on my Patreon. I have also been filming, like, and vlogging the process, but the results of that video will come out at a later date, basically. You know, we need time and distance between these things that are quite personal and sensitive. But on the day that I am filming this, I am feeling more myself in my body, in my mind. and all of that than I have been since the start of this whole process. So you caught me on a good day. Maybe that's why I just like went and put makeup on, because I was like, oh my God, I feel alive. But because of the IVF, the start of my 2026 has felt quite slow, unproductive, but like for good reasons, for reproductive reasons. It's been chill. Work-wise, it's been very slow intentionally. I have to keep reminding myself of that when I have a very quiet work week. I'm like, this was on purpose, Hannah. Don't freak out. Whereas I'm like looking at a half empty calendar and I'm like, oh my God, oh no. And I'm like, no, you did this to yourself. Like this was intentional. This is good. Ha. So that's how I am. How are you? I genuinely am interested. Like, please let me know how your 2026 is going so far. Maybe a full video instead, but favorite books for Rowan, introducing diversity and conversation starters, beautiful pictures, not boring on the millionth read. Okay, I'm going to answer this question first and then we'll get to the second one. Okay, I have some recommendations, but I want to caveat it with I am not the kind of parent who has been doing like extensive research into like the best, most diverse, like good, positive messages in the books. A lot of these books were either gifts or like just randomly found in a bookshop, and it was the one that like Rowan chose, or like I found it in a charity shop. Like it's not a super intentional collection. It's just kind of like a hodgepodge collection. But of the ones that I do own, these are the ones that I would say are like, yes, got a little stack of recommendations for you. So this is the first one. This is more of a baby book, but we've actually only just recently retired it, and Rowan is 3.5 and does still love reading this. We've just kind of like put it away. But it's Love Makes a Family, and it's really gorgeous. It's just like, love is waking up bright and early. Love is baking a special cake. But each picture shows kind of like different kinds of families, all different like skin colors, all different kind of like people and like family dynamics. Here you've got two dads bathing their twins, I'm assuming. You got two mums giving kisses goodnight. It's really lovely, and I think the pictures in it are great as well. So there's that one. This was a gift from our friend Shaba. Okay, this one is a completely random one. It is Discover Jameos del Agua with Niko. I found this in a gift shop because I went to Jameos del Agua in Lanzarote and they had this book, and I was like, oh, this is great. I can like bring this back to Rowan and like tell him about my holiday and like where I went. And it just so happens that Niko, I think this one's Niko, it just so happened that Niko, this is Gara, his cousin. Gara's got two dads, just like in a museum gift shop in Lanzarote. I was like, hell yeah. And then it's got like how a jameo is formed. And Rowan likes it because it's like about volcanoes and lava and stuff. It is a bit dense, I would say, in the kind of like scientific explanation of what's happening. But Rowan loves this book. It's good fun. Even if I struggle to sometimes explain like how a jameo like is formed. How is it formed? But yeah, love that. Random two dads. This one I found in a charity shop. It's Julian at the Wedding. And I also believe that there's other Julian books. The art in this is absolutely stunning. Let me find a lovely page for you. It's so beautiful. But Julian is at the wedding. He's playing with his friend. I think her name's Marisol. The wedding is two women getting married, and him and Marisol like go off and play and get muddy, and then Julian, I don't know, becomes a fairy. I don't know. It's very cute. It's very sweet. Look at that art. It's stunning. But yeah, I believe that there are other Julian books. Julian is a mermaid, I think might be one. Anyway, big fan. Then we've got this one, which isn't like particularly diverse, although it's just one main character who happens to be a little white boy called Rowan. So obviously big hit in our house. It's called The River, and I like this one because it's about emotions. Rowan the kid, his dog dies and then he gets really sad, but the metaphor is like the river changing. Like the river can sometimes be calm, the river can sometimes be angry, and like just like Rowan, and it kind of shows him coming out of his grief and his emotions changing and how change is good and emotions can change. So like this one. There you go. There's when the river is frozen over because Rowan is sad. We've not dealt with this in our household yet, but it might also be a good one if there's like a pet loss or family loss. But yeah, And also, it's a kid called Rowan, and it kind of looks like Rowan. But actually, in terms of diversity, it does show Rowan like growing up at the end, and his partner, his potential like wife, and then he has a kid in the end. She's brown or black, I'm not quite sure, but there you go. So they have a little mixed race child at the end of the book. Spoilers. There we go. Okay, I've got 2 books by the same author. We've got Pirate Mums and The Legend of the Wild West Twins. Pirate Mums, pretty self-explanatory. Billy's got 2 mums, they're pirates. He's embarrassed of them because they're different and weird, but they end up saving the day because they're pirates. And then this one is about 2 twins, Lil and Jill. One is more like femme and the other is more tomboy, but they both have their strengths even though they're different, and they come together as a team to defeat, what's his name? Yeehaw Jack at the rip-roaring rumble, because Yeehaw Jack is a cheat and a scumbag. I don't think they say scumbag in this story, but great pictures. There's a bit though that really kind of like hits me in terms of like lessons learned, and I feel like this would be a good one to like read to young girls as well. Jill finds out that Yeehaw Jack is a cheat and goes to Lil and is like, what are we gonna do? And they're like, we have to tell everyone. And then Jill says, no one will believe us, and I hate to cause a hullabaloo. And I'm like, oh, Jill, it's so real. So there's that. This is a great one. We love this one. Okay, and then that brings us to a bit more like older, like Rowan's like just on the cusp of being the right age for these books, and they're more like non-fiction and very explicitly about gender. We've got My Own Way, celebrating gender freedom for kids, and then Except When They Don't. And so it's like, boys are like this, girls are like this, except when they don't. I've only read these both like 1 or 2 times with Rowan. He likes this one. It's kind of like a good conversation starter to be like, what do you like doing? Like, what are your interests, kind of thing. But they both do feel like ones that he's like almost about to age into. So I'll report back. Okay, this Q&A is gonna be long if I spend that amount of time answering every question. Okay, this person had a second question, and how the coffee mornings are going, what you've learned so far, advice for getting started. And another person asked about the coffee mornings too. How are the coffee mornings going? I recently had a school reunion, and everybody I talked to said how hard it is to find new friends in your 30s. After that reunion and watching one of your videos, I got inspired to start coffee mornings as well. But with kids and responsibilities, it is so hard to keep them up. I hear you, I hear you. Okay, so generally how the coffee mornings are going, we actually haven't hosted one yet this year, but that's because another friend in our like nursery parent circle hosted a thing at her house in January. So we were like, great, like the more the merrier, share the load. It's not a hard and fast rule that we have to host it. We do still want to do more, but haven't like booked a date in yet for February. I have been getting a lot of messages and DMs from people recently saying that they have been hosting their own coffee mornings or something similar, and it makes me so happy to hear. But if you need a little extra shove and advice, I will leave a link in the description to a newsletter I wrote where I literally shared like the texts that I send to people, and like the first ever message that I sent to people explaining that we wanted to do these coffee mornings and blah, 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 blah. So I'll link to that. What advice do I even have other than like, just do it? For me, one of the hardest things has been, but like one of the things that I've really had to learn to let go of, is just the vulnerability of it and like putting myself out there and the fear of rejection. And yeah, sometimes only like 1 or 2 people have come to a coffee morning. Sometimes the whole flat has been absolutely heaving with people, and it's just a case of like taking it all in your stride. And I think the other thing is just practice. It is just a muscle that you use, and the more you use that muscle, the easier it will become. I think it's actually harder for us because we haven't made it like a super regular thing, because it just means that every time we do it, it's like just like a little bit of a heavy lift, because we're like, oh, we need to set a date and we need to message people every time. If it was more of a regular thing when people knew when to expect it, it just might be a much easier lift for us. But I know that our capacity means that like we can't commit to something like that right now. Maybe we can, I don't know. So I actually think that committing to something on a regular basis is easier in the long run, because it's just like muscle memory, and each time is like easier and easier and easier. I'll also link in the description to Priya Parker's Substack and this Substack live that she did with someone called Amanda, I think, who hosted like weekly dinners all through last year, and they talk all about like how to do that, essentially. How to start a regularly occurring casual hang. And if anyone else has any tips or tricks for it, then do leave them in the comments. You've mentioned you're starting IVF. Have you set a limit on how long/often you're willing to try? Fingers crossed everything goes well. Thank you. So we have set a limit of 3 rounds, like 3 transfers. Obviously, we'll only get to do that if we get 3 embryos that we can use, but we've kind of mentally, emotionally, and financially committed to a maximum of 3. Since Rowan just got his German passport at the end of last year, are you guys thinking about taking a family trip to Germany in the near future at all? Thoughts/feelings about that idea? We don't have a trip to Germany planned in the near future, but we do have some Europe trips planned, like Italy in May and then France in the summer. And so, you know, we'll get to use our EU passports, me and Rowan. But generally when you're traveling as a family, especially in some European countries, you kind of like all go through together anyway. Like Rowan can't go through the barriers by himself with his passport. But I would like to go to Germany again. At the moment, all of our holidays tend just to be like, oh, family are going to be there, let's do that with them. Oh, someone else is already planning a holiday and happy for us to tag along, great, we'll go there. So we're not making many like executive decisions about our own trips at this point, but maybe one day in the near future. How old do you feel versus how old you thought you'd feel at this age when you were younger? I don't know what I thought 34 would be. I feel like when I was younger, my only kind of comprehension of 30s was 13 going on 30, and life is definitely not like that. But I feel, and I think I always will feel, 28, because that is how old I was when the first lockdown started. And I just think there's something psychological going in there where I'm just like stuck. I'm obviously 28, or maybe I'm like 2 years younger, because I feel like there was like two years that we missed there. So actually I'm 32. Yeah, 34. I feel too small to be older. Like I feel like I should have grown a few more inches, but I'm still tiny. What are the parenting must-haves for stages beyond the baby stage that you found useful with Rowan? Okay, I'm not gonna give you a whole list. I'm gonna give you one thing, and that is the tower thing, the toddler tower. But the one that we got is a toddler tower that can fold down and become a little like seat and table. And this was super useful from when he could stand up, basically, like, but more so from like 18 months plus, but we still use it now. So we've been using it like every day for 2 years and I feel like it's gonna keep going. The newest use for it is that he can now move it around himself, and he will use it to get into the snack cupboard. The other morning, he was in the kitchen, I was having a shower, I came in here and he was just sat at the table playing Patchwork, which is this like board game that me and Dan have, and I looked over and the tower was at the shelves where the board games are, and I was like, okay, great, independent little boy getting out the board games. And he does still like to sit and eat at his little table, even though he can sit at the big table with us as well. So it's been great daily use since 18 months plus, and probably beyond. What do your home moving plans look like right now? They look like getting a new fixed rate mortgage on this flat at the end of this year when our current fixed rate expires. It looks like me regularly being on Zoopla and Rightmove, just like getting a vibe, getting a sense of what is going on, and also just love looking at houses and floor plans. And that's the extent of it, really. What advice do you have for apartment living with a family past babyhood? Have you ever had any disagreements on how spaces should be used, e.g. home working space, dedicated child's room, and how did you navigate those decisions? So we've never had any disagreements between me and Dan, but as things have evolved and changed in this flat, we obviously like talk about it together and kind of like problem solve together. For us in this flat, it definitely has been a case of compromising, but also like future-proofing and thinking like, how are we going to grow into this space? In an ideal world, we don't have like the computer and the desk area in the bedroom, but actually like in terms of how we live in this space and what our priorities are, that's the way that it is. Also, Rowan having his own room means that there's like basically no children's toys in this room, which is great. He just has a mini kitchen in this room, and that's it. Everything else is either in his room or in cupboards, so we can't see it. But you asked for advice, and I think my main advice is storage. Just maximize your storage if you can. And I guess like have an area, have a room where there are no children's toys or children's things, or you're able to put them away out of sight. I think that's something that's definitely like just helped us mentally be able to relax in the evenings, just like feel like there is grown-up space. Yeah, be able to put it away. I'd be interested to know if you've played any good board games recently. I remember you have quite a good collection. Why, thank you. So I have 3 new games to show you. Okay, so the first one is Flamecraft Jewels. So this is by a company called Cardboard Alchemy, and one of my followers works for them and reached out and was like, I think you would like some of our games. And so I was like, ooh, yes, please tell me. So I believe that they must have a game called Flamecraft, and this is like the 1 to 2 person player version of it. But Dan and I have played this a couple of times and it's really fun, and also the pieces in it are gorgeous. This is the board. Look at this lovely pouch and all of these like dragon tokens that are all different colors, and you like have to stack them and make patterns and like scorecards and all sorts of things. Good fun, good quick games. And then the other 2 I want to show you are not new games by any means. These are old games, and I actually bought them both on Vinted, and now Vinted is my new favorite place to find board games, to find card games. Like honestly, there's so much on there that people are getting rid of that's in really good condition. Amazing. I got Yahtzee. I love Yahtzee. I've played Yahtzee since I was a kid. This is an original, like vintage, like from the 80s Yahtzee. It even smells old, but it's got like the case, and look at this. It's just, I love it. I'm obsessed. Excellent, excellent. Been playing a lot of Yahtzee recently. Woo! And then the other one is a game that my friend Michelle reminded me of. I'd like completely forgotten that this game existed, but I used to play it all of the time. My friend from school had it at her house, and like after school go back to her house and we play this game loads. And it's called Mancala, and I don't know, I'm scared to open it, but it's got loads of like marbles in it, and it's a 2-player kind of like strategy game. Ooh, dare I, there we go. There's a lot of just like picking up the marbles and like moving them around, and it's so satisfying. And just like, you hear this? It's good, great game. So those are some recent game favorites. Okay, big question here. How do you find a sense of purpose? Do you feel like you have found yours? Sorry for the big questions, but I'm in an existential mood lately. I love a good existential mood. I don't really know if I believe that I have one purpose, but like different eras of my life, different seasons of my life will have different purposes and focuses, I guess. I also think for like my sanity, I need to find a sense of purpose that doesn't feel too grandiose, that's actually like maybe a bit smaller. Because I think there can be a lot of pressure if we go super big with our like sense of purpose and like meaning of life and all of that. And so all that being said, I don't think I could like define for you right now what I feel like my purpose is in terms of like being happy and being a good mum and leaving the world in a better place than I found it. Those all feel quite generic and obvious. I feel like my purpose for this year, like the word that I've picked for my year this year is community. And so I feel a real like sense of purpose around that this year. Community in my personal life, but also trying to figure out how I do the community thing and like bringing people together in my work life too. And you know, for many years I felt like sex and relationships education was my purpose, and that changed, and it can change. Your purpose can change. Was that answer existential enough for you? I don't know. What's your favorite non-alcoholic drink? Favorite musical artists? Any tips for someone who's trying to learn to cook? Okay, I'm gonna try and quick fire these 3 questions. Favorite non-alcoholic drink that isn't pretending to be alcohol is like some kind of elderflower cordial, like a fizzy elderflower thing. Favorite non-alcoholic drink that is pretending to be alcohol? I'm a big fan of a lot of non-alcoholic beers and IPAs, and also the 0% like Gordon's gin and tonic in a tin. That wasn't super quick fire. Favorite musical artists. The obvious answers for me are like Taylor Swift and First Aid Kit. They have been like sure faves for decades now. But if I'm thinking more recently, I got into Lawrence, the band, and then I also was recently reminded of the band The Cat Empire, who I was obsessed with when I was younger and just like fell off my radar completely. And I've been re-listening to The Cat Empire album, and I'm like, it just brings me so much joy. It's so like fun and exciting. So if anyone has any recommendations that are similar to like Lawrence and The Cat Empire, I think they're both also kind of similar vibes, let me know. But I also just do love all of the pop girlies. Any tips for someone who's trying to learn to cook? You're coming to me? You're coming to me for those tips? Find the things that you want to eat and cook those, and learn how to chop vegetables safely. I'm still not great at it. Which events/milestones would you like to celebrate with friends and or family? Birthdays and weddings are classics, but how about opening up the circle to more events? Do you know what this question reminded me of? The fact that I wanted to throw myself a 10 years of living in London celebration party, and then I never did. And that was like a year and a half ago. It was August 2014 that I moved to London. So it would have been like August 2024 that I should have thrown this party that I wanted to throw. But I got in my head of like, that's a silly reason to throw a party. No one's gonna come to your 10 years of living in London party. But other than that, I don't have any other ideas. But I like the concept and the thought behind throwing parties and soirees and celebrations that aren't birthdays, weddings, the usual shindigs. I would love to hear your ideas or any celebrations that you've hosted or been to that aren't those traditional celebrations. And then maybe we can all get some ideas. During my deconstruction, it was encouraging to hear you, someone I learned so much from, were an atheist. I have been an atheist for some years now with no spiritual beliefs. Where are you spiritually? Best wishes to you and your family. Thank you. This is such an interesting question. First of all, congrats to you. I kind of feel like maybe your like religious deconstruction, that could be a good like party to throw. Divorce parties, breakup parties, they're kind of additional. Anyway, getting distracted, but well done. You should celebrate that if you want to. Where am I at spiritually? I've always had like an aversion to religion, and I have always in the past lumped like general spirituality in with that. And so I do have this kind of like gut, visceral like discomfort around a lot of spirituality things, but I'm trying to be a bit more open-minded around spirituality and kind of like expanding the definition for myself as to what that means. And where I think I've landed currently is that it's the things that bring meaning to our lives outside of our daily routines. So it could be more wrapped up in other community things, it could be wrapped up in hobbies, it could be wrapped up in creativity, it could be wrapped up in nature, like all of these other things that can feel big and meaningful to you. So I'm trying to acknowledge more of that in my life right now and trying to kind of like identify or like notice those things that make me feel that way and be like, oh, that was a spiritual experience for me, you know, like, oh, that's what it is. But I'm not like seeking anything out. I'm not on an intentional journey. I'm just like, it's there. I'm thinking about it in the back of my mind, and like as things happen, I'm like, oh, that interesting. Okay, you've mentioned in a couple of videos that you occasionally play video games with Dan. Which ones are your favorites? So I don't really play a lot of video games anymore. That was definitely a pre-motherhood hobby for me. If you think about like all of the things that you do before you become a parent, and obviously like sacrifices have to be made because you're not going to have enough time for all of your work, friends, leisure, hobbies, all of these things, I've been able to hold on to pretty much all of the things that are important to me. Maybe not initially in that newborn stage, but like now 3.5 years in, like yes, all of those things that are important to me before are still in my life now, except for video games. And that's because they weren't as important to me. And there was something that I did with Dan when I had the time, because it was like a nice to have rather than a must have for me. Whereas video games are a must have for Dan. Like that is his main recreational, like leisure time hobby like think that he really enjoys. But when we did play a lot of games together, I will say that probably my favorite game was Civilization 6. And I tried to get into Civ 7 when it came out like last year or the year before, but I just didn't have the time. It wasn't a priority for me, so I just didn't dedicate time to it. I didn't prioritize it, and so I didn't get into it as much. But oh my God, Civ 6, I was all over that shit. Ooh, book question. How do you decide which books you read audio versus physical? Also wondering what's a 100% want to read book on your TBR this year. I thought that there was no real system in terms of what I pick physical versus audio, but actually there is. Number one, has it been recommended in audio? Like, has someone said that audiobook is an excellent experience? Two, is it a non-fiction where the author reads the audiobook? That's like, ooh, I want to hear them speak. Does a famous person, celebrity, actor, actress, or audiobook narrator who I really love narrate it? I'm in. Is it stupidly long? Is it a humongous fantasy book that I do not want to have to physically hold a copy of, because that's entirely impractical? Audio. Those I think are my main like audio requirements. Oh, one more. Do I want to start reading this immediately? And do I not have the ability to get hold of a physical copy in time? Audiobook. And then other things will be physical. Books on my TBR that I absolutely want to get to this year. I'm just going to mention a couple of new releases. So the second book in the Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi series, The Tapestry of Fate, that comes out in May. And then Louise O'Neill has got a new book out this year in April called Whatever Happened to Madeline Stone. I have no idea what it's about. I don't care. I love Louise O'Neill. So those two are up there on my list. This actually reminds me of another criteria for me for audiobook is it only available in hardback? In which case, audio. So for both of those, I imagine they'll be coming out in hardback. So I'll be like, audiobook, because I do not like hardback books. No, thank you. I'm a paperback gal. You are slowly but surely getting closer to hitting 100k subscribers on YouTube. Should have happened a long time ago if you ask me. Thank you. Any plans on a celebration for that? No, not currently, but this could be a good celebration party. I don't know. Any ideas? Let me know. I don't know when it's going to happen, but maybe in the next few months, and so I should probably start planning. Help! I love watching Q&As, but have no ideas for questions. What are you reading? You do have a question. So in physical form, I'm reading The Wedding People by Alison Espach. This is for my Patreon book club. Come and join us. There's a whole like storygraph read along, and there's different sections that are locked so you can see people's like comments and thoughts and things after you get to a certain point so you can avoid spoilers. I'm about this far in and I'm very much enjoying it. And then my current audiobook is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, read by Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum in the movies. I am 5 hours and 18 minutes into this book and they have not left the Shire. I knew what I was getting into. I knew, but it's still very funny to me. But yes, this is the year that I read The Lord of the Rings finally. I noticed you have a vivarium, but never seen you talk about it or show it. I'm interested. Yes, we have a leopard gecko called Mustard. We've had her for, how old is she? Oh my God, I do maths in my head. We got in 2019. We've had her for 7 years, so she's about 7 years old. Yeah, she lives in the Viv. She eats locusts. Rowan doesn't really interact with her all that much because they're never really awake at the same time. I honestly don't talk about it all that much because I have these like feelings of shame and guilt because I don't feel like a very good like gecko pet owner. We used to get her out a lot and like handle her and all of this, but since we had Rowan, we just don't. We keep her alive, we keep her fed and watered and her tank clean, and you know, we get her out and handle her like when we clean out the tank and stuff, but we do not like get her out and handle her anywhere near as much as we did before Rowan was born, and we're still not quite ready to get her out for Rowan to handle her as well, just because if you grab their tail, they'll drop their tails. So yeah, I don't really talk about it that much because I kind of just feel like a shit gecko mum since I became a human child mum. But she's alive and well. I don't really know if geckos need handling all that much for like their psychological well-being. I don't even know. But we do love her and she is part of the family and Rowan loves her too. Has deciding to start IVF been difficult? I wish you all the best. Thank you. I want to say the decision to start IVF wasn't that difficult, but I think it was because we basically were in the process and umming and ahhing about it for like a year before we actually committed to it. And so it definitely was the case of just like the vibes had to be right. The timing had to be right. It was very much a case of like listening to our gut feelings about it, talking with each other, checking in with each other, and having talked about it and been thinking about it for a really long time, they just got to a point where we're like, right, we're ready, let's go. Do you plan to read the whole Cosmere? So the Cosmere is the universe that Brandon Sanderson created in all of his books. I've read Mistborn and the Stormlight Archive, but I haven't read all of the kind of like standalone little books that surround it. I would like to at some point, but I'm not in a rush. I'm like, that will happen, but it's not all gonna happen like in 1 year. Favorite book you've read so far this year? Okay, let me check my story graph. There's definitely been a couple that I have given 5 stars to. So let's see. There's one. I've given one book 5 stars so far this year, and it's Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, narrated by Jessie Buckley. Again, this is another like, oh, I want to read the audiobook of that because they produced a whole new audiobook of it with Jessie Buckley narrating. Have I seen the film yet? No, I haven't, because I don't know if I can put myself through that emotionally. But I have listened to Jessie Buckley tell the story, and that is enough for me at this point. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to everybody who submitted questions. On my actual birthday tomorrow, I will be in Manchester going to the theatre with my family, having a jolly good time. I hope that you're all doing well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!